My name is Celeste Darren. I'm 28 years old, and yesterday, I found out that my mother was having an affair with my fiancé. Yes, you heard that right. The two people I loved most in the world, who I trusted, who I thought would never hurt me, betrayed me in the most soul-crushing way imaginable. Now, I'm not here for sympathy. I'm here for justice, because I am done being the naive girl who lets people walk all over her. You want to know how I went from being the perfect daughter to someone who would tear down the life I thought I had? Well, grab a seat and hit that like button if you've ever felt like the people closest to you were secretly plotting against you. Comment below what you'd do if you found out this same thing. And don't forget to subscribe, you won't want to miss what happens next. The screen fades slightly as the story starts, setting the stage for the heartbreaking unraveling of Celeste's perfect world. I had it all figured out. Or at least, I thought I did. I was about to get married to the man I believed was my soulmate. A man who checked all the boxes: charming, successful, handsome. Everything I was supposed to want. My parents loved him. Hell, they adored him. And I was the proud daughter, the one who had everything she needed to live the American dream. But all of that was a lie. My name is Celeste Darren. You don't know me, but I was a lot like you. I believed in the fairy tale. I believed in the idea that your family would always be your rock, your safe place. I believed in the picture-perfect life. My mom, Diana, she was my role model. She had always been that calm, collected woman who made everything seem flawless. Every family gathering, every birthday, every holiday, it was always picture perfect with her. And Nathaniel, my fiancé, he was everything. He came from a well-known family, a judge's son, the type of man you imagine when you think of success. He drove the right car, had the right job, the right connections. He fit in perfectly with my family, and it was supposed to be like that forever. We were getting married in the grandest cathedral in the city. It was a dream, my dream. And then, just 24 hours before our wedding, everything fell apart. You see, everything that I thought I knew about love, trust, and family was shattered by one simple truth. My mother and Nathaniel had been together behind my back for months. Celeste pauses, the camera slowly zooming in as her voice cracks, though she holds it together, determined not to break. She takes a breath. Can you even imagine it, standing there, in the most sacred place, about to marry the man you thought would love you forever, and then realizing that not only has your fiancé betrayed you, but your own mother, your mother, the one person who should have protected you, was complicit. I should have seen it coming. Little things. At first, a glance between them at family dinners, the way Nathaniel's hand would brush hers just a little too long, when they thought no one was watching, and my mom, her smile would never quite reach her eyes when she talked about him. But I didn't question it. I didn't want to see it. I couldn't. Because if I did, that would mean everything I thought was real was a lie. And that's the moment I realized I couldn't go on with the wedding. I had to know the truth. But truth comes with a price. Cut to a flashback. The music fades into the sound of a busy city street. Celeste walks into her childhood home, her arms full of wedding invitations and paperwork. The house is eerily quiet. I wasn't supposed to find out this way. I just needed to grab something from my mother's car before heading back to the office. It seemed like a normal errand, but I had no idea that this simple task would lead me to the most gut-wrenching discovery of my life. I opened the passenger door of her Mercedes, and there it was, sitting innocently on the passenger seat, a small leather notebook, the kind my mom always carried when she wanted to keep track of important things, the kind that had my name written on it. I knew something was off. I shouldn't have opened it, but I did. And there it was, written in my mother's neat, familiar handwriting. It was a confession, one that shattered everything I knew about her. The first page was dated just a few months ago, the day after Nathaniel proposed. Cut to Celeste's face, her expression a mixture of disbelief and growing rage. The camera slowly pulls in as the audience feels the tension rise. I kept reading, and I couldn't stop. It felt like a punch to the gut with every word. My mother had been pushing me into this marriage. She had been convincing me that Nathaniel was perfect for me, while secretly, she had already chosen him for herself. She was in love with him. She had been for months, and I had no idea. No idea. I didn't know who to trust anymore. Not Nathaniel, not my mother, not anyone. The camera focuses on Celeste's trembling hand, the notebook's pages fluttering in the wind as she tries to process the flood of emotions washing over her. Her voice quivers, but she steels herself. I didn't know what to do with myself. What do you do when the people you trust most have betrayed you? How do you go on knowing that your family is so broken that they would destroy everything you believed in, just to get what they wanted? I could have walked away. I could have let it slide. But I wasn't that girl anymore. I wasn't going to let them get away with this. Not after everything. No. This wasn't just about me. This was about taking back control, about finding out who I truly was, without their lies clouding my vision. I thought I was prepared to get married, to start a life with the man I thought was the one. But I was wrong. I was wrong about everything. And that's when I decided I was going to make them pay. The camera cuts to black, a soft whisper of Celeste's voice carrying over the silence. This isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about reclaiming my life. Stay tuned, because the worst is yet to come. The screen flashes with the words, "Here's the thing. I always thought I knew who I was. I had everything figured out well. Almost everything. The perfect life. The perfect family. A future that was already written for me. At least, that's what I thought. Growing up, we were the picture of an American dream. You know the kind I'm talking about, Mom. Dad, the picket fence, the smiles, the holidays full of food and laughter. My dad, Pastor William Darren, was the pillar of our community. Everyone loved him. He built his reputation on loyalty, hard work, and the kind of family values people talk about when they want to make the world seem like a good place. And my mother, Diana. She was the graceful, poised counterpart. She made sure everything in our lives looked perfect from the outside. And then there was me, the daughter who never questioned it all. I played my part, followed the rules, graduated from Georgetown with a degree in literature, landed a job as a senior editor, and met Nathaniel, my golden boy. We were the couple everyone talked about, the it couple. He was 31, successful in his career as a corporate attorney, and he came from a good family, you know, the kind of family everyone respects Judge Harrison Reed and his wife, philanthropist Victoria Reed. Nathaniel and I were perfect for each other. Or at least that's what everyone said. That was my world, my perfect little bubble. But when you grow up with this much pressure, you start to question if that bubble was ever as perfect as it seemed. You start to wonder if it's possible for things to stay that way forever. But it wasn't even close. The camera shifts to show images of Celeste's childhood home, a large, well-kept house on a quiet street. The sun shines through the trees, casting soft shadows over the front lawn. Everything looks picture perfect, yet there's a sense of unease in the air. Celeste's voice continues, her tone more somber. My parents never really saw me, not the way I needed them to, at least, they praised me for doing what I was supposed to do, get good grades, stay out of trouble, marry the right man. But it was always about appearances. You know I was their trophy daughter, their perfect example. And Nathaniel, he was the perfect match for that perfect image. He would have fit perfectly into their world. But me, I started to feel it long before everything fell apart. Every time I'd come home for family dinner, Nathaniel would talk to my mom. Not just polite conversation, but too much time spent together in the kitchen, laughing about something I didn't understand. I remember the way his eyes would linger a little too long on her when she laughed. How he always knew what wine to bring to make her smile. But I brushed it off. It was Nathaniel. He was charming. That's just who he was, right? And my mom, she was always so eager to impress him, to make sure everything was perfect, just like she made sure everything in our lives was perfect. Maybe that was my mistake. Cut to a flashback. Celeste, Nathaniel, and her parents are at a dinner table, laughing. The camera lingers on the tension in Celeste's eyes as she watches Nathaniel and her mother share a moment of laughter. There's a brief exchange between them that feels almost too intimate, but Celeste just smiles faintly, trying to fit in. Everything felt so normal, so right. But then the cracks started to show. Little things. When I was at work late one evening, I got a text from Nathaniel. He was supposed to be at a meeting, but he said he was stuck at the office. I didn't think much of it, but when I called the office, his secretary said he'd left hours ago. So I drove to his apartment. I needed to see him, needed to feel like everything was okay again. But when I got there, it wasn't. His apartment was dark. His car was parked in the garage, but he wasn't home. He had the nerve to lock the door. Nathaniel never locked the door. In 3 years of being together, he never once did that. And when he finally came to the door, he was different. There was this weird energy between us. He said it was food poisoning, that he'd been feeling sick all day. But then he closed the door before I could even say anything. And there was something in his voice, something that didn't feel right. But I wanted to believe him. I had to. Because I was already in too deep. I had invested my whole life into this relationship, into believing we had a future. I couldn't just let it go. Cut to a montage of Celeste's memories with Nathaniel dates, smiles, vacations. Each memory begins to fade as she reflects on the growing distance between them. The camera shifts back to the present, showing Celeste, deep in thought. The real turning point came a week before the wedding. I was at my parents' house, sorting through seating arrangements for the reception. It was just another task in the midst of the chaos. But when I walked in, something was off. The house was too quiet. I expected my mom to be in the kitchen, but she wasn't. I found her standing at the sink, looking flustered. Her hair, always perfectly styled, was a mess. She was washing dishes that looked too clean, and when she turned to face me, her cheeks were flushed. "Mom, what's going on?" I asked, trying to stay calm.
"Oh, nothing, sweetie. Just getting things ready for the wedding," she replied quickly, her voice high-pitched. But there was something off, something I couldn't quite place.
And then I saw it, the coffee mug on the counter, one of our special ones, the kind we only used for guests. It was still warm. I asked her about it. She panicked. Her face turned pale. "Just me," she said. A little too quickly, but I knew. I knew something was wrong. But I let it go. I didn't want to ruin the moment. I didn't want to believe that my mother, the woman who had always been my rock, could betray me in such a way. But that night, I couldn't shake the feeling. I knew something wasn't right. I just didn't know what yet. The camera lingers on Celeste's face as she looks at the floor, lost in her thoughts. There's a quiet, heavy silence before she looks back at the camera with a newfound resolve. And that's when I decided to confront the truth. I had to know what was really going on. No more pretending. No more ignoring the signs. I had to find out what was going on between Nathaniel and my mother, and I had to do it before the wedding. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Trust me, you won't want to miss it. I wish I could tell you I had some grand plan in place, but I didn't. All I had was the truth. And that's when I realized I wasn't ready for what was coming next. After what I found in that notebook, I didn't know where to start. My mother, the one woman who had always taught me how to be strong, how to uphold family values, was the very person who betrayed me. She had been with Nathaniel, and I didn't even see it. How could I not see it? But the more I thought about it, the more I understood. The truth wasn't just painful, it was suffocating. It felt like every single thing I had ever believed about love, about trust, was a lie. I wasn't just angry at them anymore. I was angry at myself for being so blind. How could I have let them do this to me? How could I have missed the signs? My mind was racing. I had to confront them. I had to make them admit what they did. But how? I wasn't just fighting for my relationship with Nathaniel. I wasn't just fighting for a marriage that I thought was going to be perfect. No, I was fighting for the truth that had been kept from me for far too long. The camera shifts to a flashback. It's a quiet evening. Celeste is sitting on the porch of her parents' home, her mind reeling. She glances at her phone screen. It's Nathaniel. The text reads, "We need to talk. I've been thinking a lot about us. Let's meet up tomorrow." She looks at the message for a long moment, her thoughts spiraling. That night, Nathaniel sent me a message. He knew something was off. I could tell by the way he worded it. He wanted to talk, and I knew exactly what that meant. I wasn't ready to face him yet. I wasn't ready to face the truth. But I had to. So the next morning, I drove to his apartment. No plan, just a gut feeling that something had to break. When I arrived, I saw him standing by the door. His face was unreadable, a mask of guilt and anxiety. He didn't know I knew, but I was about to change that. The moment he opened the door, the air in the room felt thick. He stepped back, like he was expecting me to walk in. I didn't. I just stood there, looking at him, my stomach in knots. "Nathaniel," I started, my voice barely above a whisper. "What's going on? What's been going on between you and my mom?" For a second, he didn't say anything. He just stared at me, his eyes wide, like a deer caught in headlights. And that's when I saw it. The guilt in his eyes, the fear of being caught. Celeste's eyes narrow as she recalls the moment, the camera focusing on her face as she leans in, her voice becoming more intense. I knew then he wasn't going to confess easily, so I said it. I said the words that had been stuck in my throat ever since I found out the truth. "Nathaniel, I know. I know about you and my mother. I know everything." I watched his face change in an instant. The bravado, the charm, everything he used to hide behind. It all crumbled. He turned pale, his lips pressed together, trying to hold back something, probably the truth. But I wasn't going to let him get away with it. Not this time. "Celeste, listen," he began, but I cut him off. "No, you listen. I have every single text, every picture, every piece of evidence. You're not getting away with this. Not this time." His eyes flickered to the ground, like he was trying to process the situation, trying to figure out how much I knew. That's when I pulled out my phone, showing him the pictures, the texts from my mom, from him, the messages that proved everything, the ones where she'd been sending him secret messages about our wedding. I watched as his face drained of color. His mouth opened, but no words came out. His shame was so palpable that it almost suffocated me. Cut to the moment of Celeste's confrontation with her mother. The camera focuses on Celeste's hands, tightly gripping the edge of the table as her breath quickens. After Nathaniel's silence, there was only one person left to confront: my mother. I called her, told her to meet me at the house. I could tell she was nervous, which only made me more certain that something was off. I needed to hear it from her. When she walked in, I could see the guilt on her face. She was so good at hiding things. But now, there was nothing she could do. She could see it in my eyes, I knew. "Celeste, honey," she started, her voice shaky. She tried to hug me, but I stepped back. "You don't need to know all of this." "I already know," I snapped. "I know everything, Mom, about you and Nathaniel." Her face went white. She didn't even try to deny it. Her eyes filled with tears. She was sorry, but that didn't matter anymore. She'd done something I could never forgive. She'd hurt me, betrayed me, and now I was going to make sure she understood what that felt like. "How could you do this to me?" I whispered, my voice breaking. "You were supposed to protect me. You were supposed to love me." "I do love you," she said, tears falling. "I always have. I just wanted you to be happy. And Nathaniel. He made me feel alive again. Celeste, I thought I was doing what was best. Best for you, Mom. You never once thought about what this would do to me. Did you? How this would destroy me?" I was furious now. Her head hung low, and I could feel my anger turning into something else, something cold and calculated. I wasn't going to let her off the hook. I wasn't going to let either of them off the hook. I told her straight to her face, "You will never be part of my life again." And that was it, the moment of truth. My own mother gone. Now stone cold. Her voice drops, steady and unyielding. This was just the beginning. This wasn't about revenge. It was about taking back my life, the life I thought I had. It was about making them pay for every lie, every single moment they tried to destroy me. I wasn't just going to move on. I was going to make them regret everything. Celeste pacing back and forth in a small, dimly lit room. Her face is determined. Her fists clenched. The weight of the past few days is etched in her features. Anger. Betrayal. But most importantly, resolve. She stops pacing and looks directly into the camera. "I won't lie, I've never felt this alive in my entire life. Not in the way I feel now. Everything I thought I knew about love, family, and trust, it's all gone. Shattered. But here's the thing, no one gets to hurt me. No one gets to destroy the life I worked for and just walk away without facing the consequences." "You think my mother's going to get away with it? You think Nathaniel's going to just walk out of this unscathed? No. This time, I'm in control, and they don't even see it coming." Celeste sits at her desk, her eyes scanning over documents, her phone vibrating in front of her. Her fingers trace a map of the city. Zooming in on Nathaniel's office building, a flash of determination crosses her face. I spend hours, no days, thinking about what to do next. Confronting them face to face again. That wasn't going to cut it. Not anymore. I needed to hit them where it hurt. I needed to expose them for what they really were. So I started making plans. I wasn't just going to pull a random stunt and let it fizzle out. I wasn't going to be reckless. This had to be methodical. This had to be perfect. Celeste sits across from a lawyer in a small office. The walls are filled with legal books and certificates. She flips through a folder of documents, her mind already 5 steps ahead. I wasn't playing around anymore. I called in a favor from an old colleague who worked in corporate law. I needed to know every loophole, every weak point Nathaniel and my mother had. Nathaniel's family had money, real power, and my mom, well, she wasn't exactly without connections either. But I was done being the passive one. I needed a strategy. Celeste stands outside Nathaniel's building, watching as he exits, talking on the phone with his back to her. She takes a deep breath and slowly walks towards the entrance, the heels of her shoes clicking sharply on the pavement. Her heart pounds, but her face is a mask of calm. Here's the thing about Nathaniel. He's never been someone who values loyalty. Not truly. He's always been about the appearance of it, the polished image, the perfect life. And that's what I was going to exploit. I watched him walk into his office building, and I smiled to myself. Today was the day everything would change. The camera follows Celeste as she enters a small cafe across from Nathaniel's office, her phone in her hand, prepared for her next move. She sets up a hidden recording device under the table as she waits for a call. She's playing a dangerous game, but she's fully aware of the stakes. I know what you're thinking. Why would you go this far? Why keep pushing? Because this isn't just about revenge. It's about justice. Justice for the girl who was raised to believe in family values, only to have her trust and loyalty torn apart by the people she loved most. This is about getting back what they took from me. And Nathaniel, he was going to learn that his little charade was over. Cut to Nathaniel's office building. Celeste watches him walk out and get into his car. She smiles to herself, pulling out her phone as she dials a number. The camera cuts to a text message being sent. It's time. I've got what I need. At this point, it wasn't about the family drama anymore. It wasn't even about Nathaniel or my mom. It was about the power I was starting to take back. And that power came from something simple truth. The camera cuts to a new scene. It's the day of Nathaniel's big office presentation, where he's supposed to meet with important clients and high-powered figures. Celeste's eyes glimmer with a calculated intensity. He didn't know it yet, but today, his world was going to fall apart. I had already set things in motion. I knew exactly where Nathaniel would be, and I knew that this was my moment. I hired a private investigator to gather every bit of information on him. The affair. It wasn't just a small mistake anymore. It was a pattern. A long, drawn-out web of lies and deceit. And Nathaniel didn't know I was about to tear it all apart. I was going to show his clients what he was really like, and I wasn't going to give him any chance to fix it. Cut to Celeste walking through the hallway of Nathaniel's office building. Her expression calm, but her heartbeat loud in her ears. She's carrying a small bag, her eyes scanning the area as she approaches the executive floor. The tension rises as she gets closer. I was nervous. Of course, who wouldn't be? But I had already planned everything down to the last detail. I knew Nathaniel's routine. I knew where he would be. And what I had in my bag was the final nail in his coffin. It wasn't just about catching him. It was about exposing him in front of the people who mattered most. The camera shows Celeste standing outside the conference room, a phone pressed to her ear. She's waiting. Then, with a final glance at the door, she nods. The screen cuts to black. Right now, Nathaniel thinks he's untouchable, but what he doesn't know is that he's already lost. The moment he walked into that meeting today, he walked straight into my trap. And there's no way out. The screen fades to black, and the words "to be continued" appear on the screen. Make sure you're subscribed, because in the next part, you'll see how everything comes crashing down, and trust me, you won't want to miss it. At this point, there was no turning back, no second guessing. I had come too far to back down now. What I had planned, what I knew would happen next, was going to change everything. Nathaniel, my mother, they had played their little game, their charade for so long, thinking they were untouchable. But I had learned a long time ago that even the most perfect of facades crumbles when you shine a light on the cracks. And trust me, the light was coming, fast. I knew what I had to do. I had already set everything in motion. The truth was already starting to spread. The cracks in their perfect lives were deepening by the hour. But now it was time to hit them where it would hurt the most. Nathaniel had no idea what was coming. But he would. And he wouldn't be able to stop it. I had planned this down to the last detail, every piece of evidence, every move, every step. It wasn't just about ruining their reputations. No, it was about exposing them, about showing the world who they really were underneath all their charm and status. I wasn't here to play nice. And I wasn't here to back down. I didn't have to do anything crazy. I didn't need to yell, to scream, to make a scene. I just needed to get the right people in the right place at the right time. The rest would take care of itself. I had arranged everything, every detail. Nathaniel's clients, the people who had trusted him, were about to find out exactly who he was. They would see the man who had destroyed my life, not the polished, successful attorney they thought they knew. I had a few friends in high places, a couple of people who owed me favors, a few phone calls, and just like that, the email containing Nathaniel's dirty secrets was sent to everyone who mattered. It was one thing for Nathaniel to betray me, but for him to betray them. His clients, the people who had trusted him with their careers and their businesses, that was the final straw. His world was about to implode, and it wasn't going to be pretty. He had no idea what was coming for him, and I was enjoying every second of watching it unfold. I wasn't the only one he had lied to. He had been living in a house of cards, and I was the one who was going to watch it all come crashing down. This is it, the moment I had been waiting for. All the pain, all the lies, all the betrayals, I had turned them into something that could never be undone. But this wasn't just for me. This was for the girl who spent her entire life being overlooked, who was constantly told she didn't fit in. I was taking my power back. I was taking my life back. They're all scrambling now, Nathaniel. My mother, they think they can fix this. They think they can talk their way out of it. But it's too late. The truth is out there, and it's not going anywhere. Celeste narrating, I knew it was coming. The fall. It's a beautiful thing. Really. Watching someone who thought they were untouchable come face to face with the consequences of their actions. Everything has changed, but this isn't over yet. There's still more to come, and trust me, you won't believe what happens next. Celeste standing at her apartment window, gazing out at the city lights below. Her reflection is faint in the glass, but her expression is sharp, unreadable, the calm before the storm. She exhales slowly, almost as if preparing for the aftermath she knows is coming. You know, they say the hardest part is over once the truth is out, but I had a feeling it was just beginning. Nathaniel and my mother, they hadn't realized yet that the fall was much harder than the rise. They had been playing their games for so long that they never saw the wreckage they'd caused. And now I was watching it all unfold. By the time Nathaniel realized what was happening, it was too late. The email I sent to his clients, the one that exposed his lies, the affair with my mother, the mess he had created behind the scenes, it had already done its damage. They didn't just lose trust in him. They lost trust in everything he represented. Nathaniel was a smart man, but he was about to realize that smarts don't mean anything when the foundation beneath you crumbles. The calls were endless. His clients, his friends, his colleagues, they all turned their backs on him, and every one of them had one question. How could you? Nathaniel's phone rings again. He's about to answer, but the call drops. He looks at his screen in confusion, then slams the phone down. He looks back at his clients, who are now whispering among themselves. He looks back at Celeste, his face filled with confusion and then panic. You can't lie your way out of the truth. Nathaniel learned that the hard way. He tried to fix it. He begged. He called the people he thought would help, but nothing could save him. And what was worse, what really aided him was that he didn't know who had pulled the strings. He had no idea I was the one who had set everything in motion. The look on his face when he realized it was me, it was priceless. Celeste sitting at her kitchen table, staring down at her phone. She's just received a new message from her lawyer. They're looking for you. Your mother knows. Be careful. My mother, she wasn't just devastated by what I'd done. She was scared. She knew the game was over for her, too. And she wasn't going down alone. She tried to reach out to me, tried to make it right, but it was too late for that.
She had no idea I had been the one to plan every little detail. She thought Nathaniel would be the one to fix it all. She thought he could get us both out of this mess.
But he couldn't. I was the one pulling the strings now, and there was no going back. Celeste walking down a crowded street, her head held high. She's met with whispers, sidelong glances, and the occasional cold stare. But she walks on, unbothered, like she's already left the past behind her. As she reaches a coffee shop, her phone rings. She glances at the screen and sees her mother's name. Without hesitation, she answers. I picked up the phone, but not for the reasons you might think. My mother had tried to reach out multiple times since everything went down. She wanted to fix it, make me understand why she did what she did. But honestly, I didn't want to hear it anymore. She had her chance. She was crying, apologizing, begging me to forgive her, to understand that it was a mistake. She said she never meant to hurt me, that she thought she was doing what was best. But I wasn't buying it anymore. She had spent my whole life teaching me to be strong, to never let anyone walk all over me. But the moment she made that choice, the moment she decided to betray me, she lost everything, and no apology could change that. Celeste standing alone, looking out at the city skyline from her apartment. The tension is palpable. Her phone vibrates once again. But this time, it's a call from Nathaniel. She stares at the screen for a long moment before swiping to decline. It was time for the final chapter. I had done everything I needed to do, but I wasn't done yet. There was still one last thing left to do. I had earned this, and I wasn't going to let them walk away unscathed. Nathaniel wasn't the only one who needed to face the consequences of his actions. My mother, she needed to face me. She needed to face the reality of what she had done to her own daughter. And this time, I wasn't going to let her off the hook. Celeste entering her mother's house. The door creaks open slowly, the silence thick as she walks through the house. Her mother stands in the living room, her back to the door, hands trembling as she waits. I was about to make my final move. She thought she could control everything. She thought she could manipulate me into forgiving her. But I wasn't that girl anymore. I wasn't the one who begged for validation. Not anymore. She wanted to talk. She wanted to explain, but all I could think about was how empty her promises had become. She had been my protector, my guide, but she had failed me, and I wasn't going to let her tear me down again. Celeste's face as she faces her mother, her gaze unwavering. The tension is thick, and her voice is cold as she speaks. I'm done, I told her. Done with the lies, done with the betrayal, done with you. The silence in the room felt suffocating, but I knew this was it. No going back. The screen fades to black, leaving the viewers in suspense. You can't undo what's been done, but you can sure as hell make sure they never do it again. And that's exactly what I planned on doing. Make sure you're subscribed. The end is closer than you think, and I promise, you won't believe what happens next. You know, they say the hardest part is over once the truth is out, but I had a feeling it was just beginning. Nathaniel and my mother, they hadn't realized yet that the fall was much harder than the rise. They had been playing their games for so long that they never saw the wreckage they'd caused. And now I was watching it all unfold. By the time Nathaniel realized what was happening, it was too late. The email I sent to his clients, the one that exposed his lies, the affair with my mother, the mess he had created behind the scenes, it had already done its damage. They didn't just lose trust in him, they lost trust in everything he represented. Nathaniel was a smart man, but he was about to realize that smarts don't mean anything when the foundation beneath you crumbles. The calls were endless. His clients, his friends, his colleagues, they all turned their backs on him. and every one of them had one question: how could you? Nathaniel's phone rings again. He's about to answer, but the call drops. He looks at his screen in confusion, then slams the phone down. He looks back at his clients, who are now whispering among themselves. He looks back at Celeste, his face filled with confusion and then panic. You can't lie your way out of the truth. Nathaniel learned that the hard way. He tried to fix it. He begged. He called the people he thought would help. But nothing could save him. And what was worse, what really aided him, was that he didn't know who had pulled the strings. He had no idea I was the one who had set everything in motion. The look on his face when he realized it was me, it was priceless. My mother, she wasn't just devastated by what I'd done. She was scared. She knew the game was over for her, too. And she wasn't going down alone. She tried to reach out to me, tried to make it right, but it was too late for that. She had no idea I had been the one to plan every little detail. She thought Nathaniel would be the one to fix it all. She thought he could get us both out of this mess, but he couldn't. I was the one pulling the strings now, and there was no going back. I picked up the phone, but not for the reasons you might think. My mother had tried to reach out multiple times since everything went down. She wanted to fix it, make me understand why she did what she did. But honestly, I didn't want to hear it anymore. She had her chance. She was crying, apologizing, begging me to forgive her, to understand that it was a mistake. She said she never meant to hurt me, that she thought she was doing what was best. But I wasn't buying it anymore. She had spent my whole life teaching me to be strong, to never let anyone walk all over me. But the moment she made that choice, the moment she decided to betray me, she lost everything, and no apology could change that. It was time for the final chapter. I had done everything I needed to do, but I wasn't done yet. There was still one last thing left to do. I had earned this, and I wasn't going to let them walk away unscathed. Nathaniel wasn't the only one who needed to face the consequences of his actions. My mother, she needed to face me. She needed to face the reality of what she had done to her own daughter. And this time, I wasn't going to let her off the hook. I'm done, I told her. Done with the lies, done with the betrayal, done with you. The silence in the room felt suffocating, but I knew this was it. No going back. You can't undo what's been done, but you can sure as hell make sure they never do it again. And that's exactly what I planned on doing. Make sure you're subscribed. The end is closer than you think. And I promise, you won't believe what happens next. Story 2. I never imagined my 30th birthday would end like this. I stood there in the backyard, champagne glass in hand, the cold metal of it pressing against my skin. The flickering candlelight from the cake illuminated the faces of 40 guests' friends, family, co-workers, all eagerly waiting for me to make a wish, to blow out the candles and pretend everything was perfect. But I wasn't paying attention to any of them. My eyes were locked on two people who meant the world to me. But now, standing there in front of everyone, they were slowly crumbling the last bit of the trust I had left. My sister, Tammy, and my husband, Philip. Tammy, with that damn smile, her lips curving in a way that used to bring me comfort. But now, it twisted in a sickening way, and Philip, his eyes, filled with guilt, couldn't even meet mine. Instead, he stared at the ground, like the weight of the secret he'd been hiding from me for weeks was too much to bear. The room felt suffocating. The laughter and chatter around me grew distant, like I was underwater. I tried to steady myself, but the trembling in my hand was unmistakable. I wasn't shaking from the cold, no. This was something much deeper. And then, Tammy spoke. Her voice rang out, slicing through the conversation like a knife. Before we sing happy birthday to our dear Jessica, she began, drawing everyone's attention, I have an announcement that will make today even more special. I knew what was coming. I had known for exactly 3 weeks, 2 days, and 16 hours. But knowing didn't make it hurt any less. I had heard the whispers, seen the way Philip avoided my eyes, the late nights, the secretive phone calls, the unexplained absences. But this was the confirmation. "I'm pregnant," Tammy said, her voice strangely triumphant, her hand resting gently on her still flat stomach. She paused, looking directly at me, those green eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that made my stomach churn. And then came the words that felt like the floor dropped out beneath me. "And Philip is the father." I froze. The gasp from the crowd felt like a deafening roar in my ears. I barely registered the sound of my mother's wine glass shattering on the floor. My father's face went pale as ash, but I didn't move. I didn't cry. I didn't blink. I couldn't. I stood there, paralyzed, the weight of her words crushing me. They were all staring at me, my family, my friends, my life, reduced to nothing but a spectacle for their amusement. But what they didn't know was that just 3 weeks, 2 days, and 16 hours ago, I discovered something that would make their betrayal look like child's play. 3 weeks, 2 days, and 16 hours before the party. I sat alone in a sterile doctor's office, the smell of disinfectant hanging in the air like a warning. The buzzing fluorescent lights above me cast an eerie glow as I swung my legs nervously on the edge of the examination table. My heart pounded and I couldn't seem to get a grip on my breath. Dr. Martinez, a kind but clinical woman, stood at the counter, reading over my test results, her brows furrowed, and I could see the discomfort in her expression before she even spoke. "Jessica," she said softly, setting down the clipboard, "I'm afraid the results aren't what we hoped for." I felt my stomach twist in a way that had nothing to do with the excitement of becoming a mother. "I've been trying to get pregnant for 2 years," I explained. 2 years of tracking temperatures, timing everything, hoping for the miracle that never came. Dr. Martinez took a deep breath and glanced at me with sympathy. "I'm sorry, but your fallopian tubes are blocked. The chances of natural conception are virtually 0. Her words hit me harder than anything I'd ever experienced. Everything I had dreamed of becoming a mother. Raising children with Philip was slipping away. But it wasn't just the loss of my dream that hurt. It was the way Philip had distanced himself. The way he'd become more cold, more distant, working late, taking calls in the garage, showering the moment he came home like he was trying to wash the guilt off. I had my answer, and the answer was more than just infertility. It was betrayal. As Dr. Martinez continued to speak, I barely heard her. My mind was already spiraling. The confusion, the hurt, the anger, all crashing together. Did Philip know? I barely stopped myself from asking the question that burned inside me, the question I already knew the answer to. The silence that followed was all the confirmation I needed. Philip had known. He had known before I did. I walked into the house that afternoon, my mind reeling. The suburban home we had bought together, the home I had envisioned raising children in, now felt like a tomb. I went straight to Philip's office, my heart thundering in my chest as I prepared to confront him. His laptop was sitting on his desk, password protected as usual. But I knew his passwords. I had memorized them years ago, when everything felt safe, when we shared everything. His email, our bank accounts, our dreams. I clicked open his email inbox, scrolling through the mundane work messages and spam until something caught my eye. A folder titled Tax Documents. It was so out of place, so methodical Philip never kept anything organized. I clicked it open. Dozens of screenshots. Text messages between Philip and someone saved in his phone as T. "Can't wait to see you tonight." One read, "Philip, tell Jessica you're working late." T already did. "She believes anything I say. She's weak, always has been." I couldn't breathe. My hand shook as I scrolled. My sister, my own sister, had been helping Philip plan this. But that wasn't even the worst part. No, the worst part came when I saw the next message. Philip, I'm pregnant. I stared at the words, the blood draining from my face. My sister, my husband, together, lying, deceiving me. But they weren't done yet. Philip, what do? We tell her at her birthday party. Maximum impact. She'll fall apart in front of everyone. Then you comfort her, suggest divorce, for her own good. My heart stopped. I thought it had already shattered. But no. It cracked wide open at that moment. But then came the final twist. Need another $30,000 by next month. Business is bleeding money. They had been stealing from me, from my parents, using my infertility as an excuse to take everything. I wasn't just their victim, I was their mark. And now, I was going to make them regret ever underestimating me. I sat back in Philip's chair, stunned. But there was no time to wallow, no time to feel sorry for myself. I had a plan to take back everything. And it all started now. The sun had barely started to dip beneath the horizon as I pulled into the driveway of our home, a white colonial house with black shutters on Maple Street. To anyone else, it looked like a picture-perfect suburban dream. But to me, it felt like a prison built on lies, deceit, and the wreckage of everything I thought I had. I stepped out of the car, my heels clicking against the concrete as I walked up the stone path to the front door. The lawn was meticulously manicured, the roses blooming in perfect rows, a stark contrast to the chaos inside my mind. Everything was carefully curated to look perfect. But I wasn't fooled anymore. Inside, the house smelled faintly of lavender, the kind of smell you expect from a home that's trying to be welcoming, trying to be something it wasn't. My heart pounded in my chest as I walked through the front door, my fingers tightening around the strap of my purse. I didn't know what to expect. Would Philip be here? Would Tammy be here too? Would I have to face them? Knowing what I now knew, Philip didn't even look up as I entered. The soft hum of the TV was the only sound, and it felt like the walls were closing in on me. It was the same old routine him, lost in his phone, me, lost in my thoughts. For weeks now, I'd felt like a stranger in my own home, surrounded by silence. It wasn't always like this. There was a time when we would laugh together, make plans for the future, talk about having children. But now there was nothing. I took a deep breath and stepped into the living room, the weight of the moment bearing down on me. My hand hovered over the light switch as I tried to keep myself composed. I knew what I had to do. I had to confront him. "Philip," I said, my voice quiet but sharp. He didn't respond immediately. It was like he hadn't even heard me. I watched as he scrolled through his phone, his thumb moving absent-mindedly. For a moment, I thought he might never look up. "Philip, look at me." Finally, his eyes lifted, slowly, like he was dreading the confrontation. His gaze was evasive, his face strained, as though he knew that what was coming would be more than just a simple conversation. "What's going on, Jess?" The words were hollow. I could hear the distance between us and the way he said my name. My breath caught in my throat as the dam inside me finally cracked.
"Philip, I know everything."
There was a moment of silence. His eyes widened for just a second, and for the briefest of moments, I saw something flicker in them, fear. It was gone before I could truly register it, but it was there. "I know about the affair," I continued, my voice steadying with each word. "I know you've been with Tammy. But what I didn't know, what I never could have imagined, was how far you'd go to destroy everything we've built. You didn't just sleep with my sister, Philip. You went behind my back, took my dreams, and turned them into lies." His face paled. He opened his mouth to speak, but the words caught in his throat.
Jessica, please, let's not do this here.
I didn't want to hear his excuses. I didn't want to hear him apologize. Not when it was too late. My stomach churned as I tried to push down the rising tide of emotions that threatened to overwhelm me. But I wasn't going to back down. Not this time.
No, Philip, we're doing this now.
I want a divorce. Philip. His eyes widened in shock, but I wasn't done. I want everything. Our house, our assets, and every penny you've stolen from me. From my parents. I'm not walking away empty-handed. Not this time. I turned away, my chest tight, my heart racing. I had always tried to believe that love could fix things, that if I just worked harder, loved him more, it would all work out. But this was different. This wasn't just about love anymore. This was about power, about control, and they thought they could take it all from me.
I want everything. Philip, everything.
I didn't look back as I walked to the door, but I heard him call my name. It was too late for apologies. It was too late for regret. Gần một cuộc gặp mặt bí mật giữa Jessica và luật sư Janet. I knew I had to be smart about this. I couldn't just go in guns blazing, expecting to win. No, I needed a plan. And so, I met with Janet, my lawyer, who was more than willing to help me take control of this situation.
You've got a case. Jessica, we can get the evidence proof of his infidelity and the financial fraud, and we'll make sure he doesn't get away with this.
I nodded. Janet had always been there for me. And now, she was going to help me turn the tables. I could feel the pieces falling into place. The strategy forming in my mind. I wasn't just going to get my life back. I was going to make sure they paid for everything they had done.
Let's do it.
The next few days felt like an unending storm. Every moment was consumed by the quiet roar in my head, the disbelief, the anger, the burning question of how my life had come to this. Philip had been my everything, my partner, my confidant, and now he was nothing but a stranger who had betrayed me in the worst possible way. Tammy, my sister, the one I had always protected, had crossed a line I couldn't even begin to comprehend. I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat, and I definitely couldn't stop thinking about what they had done. I spent my days going through the motions work, errands, pretending everything was fine. But in my mind, I was calculating, gathering evidence, preparing for what I was going to do next. The paperwork was spread out on the coffee table: tax returns, bank statements, property deeds, anything that might help me uncover the truth. I had no idea where to start, but I knew I had to dive in. I wasn't going to let them get away with this. I picked up the first document in the pile, a credit card statement. And there it was. A transaction for $3,000 at a luxury hotel downtown. The date matched up with one of the business trips Philip had taken. My hand tightened around the paper, the pressure building behind my eyes. This was the first clue, but it wasn't enough. Not yet. I spent the next few hours combing through everything, every transaction, every hotel stay, every charge that didn't make sense. And there, buried beneath what appeared to be a pile of mundane expenses, I found more. A second charge, then a third. Hundreds of dollars spent at expensive restaurants, lavish gifts sent to someone I didn't know. I froze. Tammy's name appeared on one of the receipts. It was clear now. Philip had been using our joint accounts, our savings, the money we had put aside for our future, to fuel his affair with my sister. Not only had he betrayed me emotionally, but now he was stealing from me, too. I whispered to myself, so this is it. The truth. Philip's been lying to me for months, and now I've got the proof. But I need more. I need to destroy them both. The pieces were coming together, but the weight of what I was about to do settled heavily on my chest. This wasn't just about revenge. This was about taking back control. This was about making sure I never had to rely on a man again. I met with Janet the next morning. The office smelled like fresh coffee and printer ink, the kind of sterile atmosphere that made everything feel like a business transaction. And that's exactly what this was. Business. A war for my future. Janet leaned over the desk, reviewing the papers. This is good. Jessica, really good. You've got everything you need to take him to court. The bank statements, the credit card receipts. This is solid proof. I nodded. But my mind was elsewhere. The anger that had been simmering beneath the surface was beginning to bubble up again. Tammy and Philip had no idea what was coming. I smiled. A cold, almost chilling smile. I'm not just taking him to court. I'm going to make sure they both pay for everything. I'm going to destroy their lives. Completely. Janet raised an eyebrow. Are you sure this is the best approach? We can do this the legal way. We can fight for the divorce, and you'll get what's rightfully yours. But revenge can turn messy. I smiled again, this time more firmly. I've already been through the worst, the lies, the betrayal. If I have to get my hands dirty to make sure they never hurt me again, so be it. I arrived home later that evening, my heart pounding as I approached the front door. Tammy's car was parked in the driveway. She was here. Of course. She was... I opened the door, and there she was, sitting on the couch like nothing had changed. Her blonde hair fell in soft waves around her shoulders, and her eyes, those damn eyes, looked at me with feigned innocence. Hey, sis, how's it going? I wanted to check in on you. I stared at her for a moment, my mind racing. There she was, sitting in the living room of the house I had once shared with Philip. The house that was now a reminder of everything they had stolen from me. I could feel the rage bubbling up inside me, but I kept my voice steady. Funny. I was about to ask you the same thing. What are you doing here? Tammy playing the dutiful sister, or just making sure I'm still in the dark? Her face faltered, just for a second, but it was enough for me to see the cracks in her facade. What do you mean? She stammered. I walked over to the couch, sitting down next to her, the distance between us smaller than I liked. I know everything, Tammy, about you and Philip, about the money, about the lies. Her eyes widened in shock, but she quickly recovered, trying to keep her cool. I don't know what you're talking about, Philip and I. Don't lie to me, I interrupted. I saw the receipts. I know you've been using my money, our money, to fund your affair with my husband, and I'm done pretending like everything is fine. The tension in the room was palpable. I watched her squirm as she tried to come up with an excuse, but the truth was already hanging in the air between us. I'm taking this to the next level. Tammy, I continued, my voice colder now. You and Philip have no idea what's coming. You think you can take everything from me? Well, I've got a plan, and trust me, you won't see it coming. I stood up and turned to leave. But before I reached the door, I looked over my shoulder, my eyes locking onto hers one final time. Get out, now! She didn't say a word. She didn't even try to stop me. The next few days were a blur of planning. I knew I had to be precise. One wrong move, and everything would fall apart. But I wasn't about to let that stop me. I was going to watch everything they built together burn to the ground. And when it was all over, I would be the one left standing. But then, just as I was preparing to take the next step, something unexpected happened. I got a call. Jessica, you need to come to the hospital, now. The voice on the other end was panicked, shaky. It was Janet. Something had happened. Something that could ruin everything I had been planning. I didn't know who was more dangerous now, my sister, my husband, or the unexpected twist that was coming for me. To be continued. The hospital room smelled sterile, the kind of scent that made you aware of just how fragile life was. My fingers gripped the cold metal chair, knuckles turning white. Janet had called, and the panic in her voice told me this wasn't just another bump in the road. It was something much worse. I had been preparing for my next move, strategizing, gathering evidence, figuring out how to dismantle everything Philip and Tammy had built, but now, everything hung by a thread. The twist, Janet had heard something that could change the game entirely. The door swung open, and Janet walked in. Her expression was tight, eyes dark with concern. "Jessica," she said, sitting down across from me, "we need to talk." I sat up straighter. My mind raced. "Is everything okay?" I asked. Even though I already knew the answer, nothing had been okay for a long time. Janet took a deep breath, pushing the hair from her face. "They've got inside help," she said quietly. "It's worse than we thought. This goes deeper than just your sister and Philip. I know who's been behind their financial manipulations." I froze. Inside help, my stomach flipped. "Who?" I whispered, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. Janet leaned forward, her eyes searching mine for a reaction. "Your father." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My father. The man who had taught me everything about business, who had shown me how to stand up for myself, had been working with Philip and Tammy. Had he been in on it the whole time? I felt a surge of heat flood my face, the anger burning through me in waves. "How do you know?" I managed to ask, my voice barely above a whisper. "Philip had been in contact with him for months. They were planning a way to take you out of the picture permanently. A legal loophole. Something to push you out of your inheritance. The affair wasn't the only thing they were hiding. Jessica." I felt like the ground had been ripped out from beneath me. My own father. He wasn't just a bystander, he was an active participant in everything that had happened to me. The betrayal ran deeper than I could have ever imagined. "That's it," I said, a cold resolve settling in. "That's where I strike." Janet nodded. She didn't need to say anything more. I knew what I had to do. I walked back into my childhood home later that evening, the weight of everything I had just learned pressing heavily on my chest. The house felt like a maze of lies now, every corner holding secrets I hadn't even begun to uncover. But I was done being the one in the dark. I stood in front of my father's study, the door slightly ajar. He was inside, probably going through papers, acting like everything was fine, like he hadn't just conspired against me. I could hear the faint shuffle of papers from inside. I hesitated, my hand resting on the doorframe, the thought of confronting him churning in my stomach. But I couldn't wait anymore. He wasn't the man I thought he was. He had been part of the plan all along. I pushed the door open. Stepping inside, my father looked up, a smile spreading across his face when he saw me. "Jess, sweetheart, what brings you here?" he asked, his voice smooth as always. I didn't smile back. Instead, I closed the door behind me, slowly. "I know everything," I said, my voice steady. My father's expression didn't change, but I could see the flicker of panic in his eyes. Just for a second. He hid it well, but I knew him. I had grown up watching him manipulate everyone around him, making deals, making people believe he was always in control. But now, the cracks were starting to show. "What do you mean? Sweetheart?" His voice was calm, controlled, but I could hear the tension behind it. "I know about the affair. I know about the money you've been siphoning off from me and my trust fund. I know everything, Dad." His eyes widened, and for a moment, I thought he might speak, but then, he did something I wasn't expecting. He stood up slowly, straightening his suit jacket, a slow smile curling at the corners of his lips. "Well, Jessica," he said coolly, "you've always been the stubborn one, haven't you? I should have known you'd find out eventually. I felt the fury building in my chest.
You've been a part of this, haven't you? I bit out, my voice growing colder. You've been working with Philip and Tammy, planning to take me out of everything that's mine. You've been planning this for months. My father's smile faltered. He stepped closer, his voice lowering.
I'm sorry you feel that way, Jessica, but you're just too emotional to understand the bigger picture. He paused, studying me with that familiar calculating look. You always were. You couldn't see that this was never about you. This was about protecting the family legacy, making sure things didn't fall apart.
I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound.
So, you thought destroying me was the answer. You thought betraying your own daughter was the right move for the family. He raised his hands, as if to placate me. I didn't want to hurt you, Jessica. But this is bigger than you. You're not cut out for the world I've built. You never were.
I could feel the anger swelling inside me. How dare he? How dare he sit there, so calm, acting like his betrayal was justified? I wasn't just going to take this from him. Not now. Not ever.
I'm done being your pawn, I said, my voice steady but icy. And I'm not walking away from this. You and Philip and Tammy. You're going to regret ever thinking I was weak. I will destroy everything you've built. Everything. My father's face went hard, his jaw tightening.
Do you really think you can stop me? Jessica, he said quietly, his tone no longer friendly. It was a warning.
I stepped closer to him, my eyes never leaving his. I'm not going to stop until I take it all back. You've messed with the wrong person. Dad? I left the room, my heart pounding, but there was no fear now, just a cold, quiet rage. The war was on, and I was playing for keeps. The pieces were falling into place, and they would never see it coming. To be continued. The days after my confrontation with my father felt like a whirlwind. My world was spinning faster than I could keep up with. And yet, a strange calmness washed over me, for the first time in what felt like forever. I wasn't just reacting, I was in control. I sat at my kitchen table, a laptop open in front of me. The cold coffee beside me was untouched. I hadn't had time to drink it. The only thing I could focus on now was the task at hand. Everything had been building up to this moment. This was the beginning of my plan to make them all pay. I'd spent the past few days gathering everything I could. Documents, photos, witnesses. It was all coming together. I had the proof of Philip's affair, the evidence of my father's involvement. And now, I needed to make sure they couldn't weasel their way out of it. My strategy was simple: hit them where it hurt. The money, the reputation, the power. I opened a folder labeled The Plan. It was a detailed outline of what I needed to do to ensure that Philip, Tammy, and even my father couldn't escape the consequences of their actions. The first step was to make sure the affair became public knowledge. Not just in my family, no. I was going to expose it in a way that would humiliate them in front of everyone. I needed witnesses. I needed a scandal that couldn't be ignored. I had already contacted the right people. My first step was calling Paul, my brother-in-law, the one who had always felt like an outsider in this family. He was the perfect person to help me execute this. Paul wasn't a part of the conspiracy, but he had been recording everything for the family documentary that my father insisted on filming every year. The irony wasn't lost on me. Paul, the man who was always just a bystander, was about to be my secret weapon. Paul, I said, my voice calm, controlled. I need your help. Jessica, I'm not sure what's going on, but you're not the same person anymore. What's happened? I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts. You know how my dad has been filming everything for years, right? The so-called family documentary. I know, but what does this have to do with anything? I need the footage from last year's reunion. Paul, I need you to send me the clips of Philip and Tammy. There's something important in there, something that can destroy them. I could hear Paul hesitating on the other end. Are you sure this could get really ugly? Jess. I stood up, my heart pounding with the thought of what I was about to do. I'm sure. Paul, this has to happen, and I need you to help me take them down.
There was a long pause before Paul finally agreed. Okay, I'll send it over. I waited for the footage. When it finally came, I clicked through the videos quickly, my breath catching in my throat with each second. Philip and Tammy, laughing together, holding hands, the two of them acting like they were invincible, untouchable.
I had them. I had the damning proof. But now, it was time for the second phase. I met with Janet again. This time, the conversation was different. This wasn't just about securing my future. It was about destroying theirs.
I've got everything. Janet, the footage, the emails, the financial records. It's all here. I slid the folder across the table. I want to file for divorce, and I want to make sure they never get away with this.
Janet glanced at the folder and nodded, her eyes narrowing as she began flipping through the papers. You've got the evidence. Jessica, she said slowly, this is more than enough. But remember, once we go public with this, there's no turning back. There will be no way to undo the damage. I leaned forward, my face hardening. I'm not interested in undoing anything. Janet, I'm interested in making sure they suffer the consequences of what they've done. She looked at me for a long moment before nodding. All right, we'll file for divorce. But we'll also use this footage to expose everything. Not just the affair, everything. You'll be the one in control. You'll be the one who gets what's rightfully yours. The next morning, I showed up unannounced at Philip's office. He wasn't expecting me. I walked in with purpose, my heels clicking against the tile floor. His assistant gave me a confused look, but I didn't care. This was my moment. Philip was sitting at his desk, talking on the phone, when he saw me. His face turned pale. He immediately cut the call short and stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. Jessica, what are you doing here? He asked, his voice uneasy. I'm here to give you a little taste of your own medicine, I said, my voice cool and controlled. I'm done being the good wife. Philip, I've got the footage, I've got everything, and I'm about to ruin everything you've worked for. His face twisted in panic. You wouldn't. Oh, I would, and I will. I turned to walk out, but not before I dropped the bombshell. I've already contacted the media. Your affair, your money laundering. Everyone is going to know. You thought you could get away with this, but now, it's my turn. I saw the fear in his eyes. It was the same fear I'd seen in his eyes the night of my birthday, when he knew that his world was about to come crashing down. I walked out of his office, feeling a sense of triumph that I hadn't felt in years. But the work wasn't over. This was just the beginning. I stood in front of the window, looking out at the city skyline. This was my world now. This was my fight, and I wasn't going to lose. But then, as if to remind me how quickly everything could change, my phone buzzed. It was from Janet. I need you to get to the office. Now. There's something you don't know. Something that changes everything. My heart stopped. What was this new twist? What had I missed? The phone call from Janet was like a punch to the gut. It came at the worst possible time. Just as I was about to wrap up everything, the footage was ready. The documents were in place. My next move was clear: make sure that Philip and Tammy could never get away with their lies. But Janet's voice, strained with urgency, pulled me out of my plans. Jessica, I need you to come to the office. Now. There's something you don't know. Something that changes everything. I didn't hesitate. I dropped everything and drove straight to her office, my heart pounding. As the city lights flickered by in the night, my mind raced. What could it be? Had I missed something? Was there another layer to this betrayal that I hadn't uncovered yet? When I arrived, Janet was pacing, her hands clenched into fists, eyes darting nervously. There was a heaviness in the air that I couldn't quite place. "Sit down, Jessica," Janet said, motioning toward the chair across from her. "We need to talk." I sat down, the weight of the moment sinking in. I've been digging deeper into the financials, into Philip's dealings, and it's not just him and your father, there's someone else involved, someone you'd never expect. I felt the blood drain from my face. Who's behind this now? Janet handed me a stack of papers, all marked with the same company logo, Thompson Enterprises, my father's company. But there was something off about it, something I didn't understand at first. "I've been going through the records from your father's company. There's a business partner of his, someone who has been funneling money through Philip's accounts, someone who knew exactly what was happening in the background." I flipped through the papers quickly, the words blurring in front of my eyes, and then I saw it. Kenneth Collins. The name jumped out at me. Kenneth Collins, the trusted family friend who'd worked with my father for years. He'd been a fixture in my life since childhood, always there at family gatherings, always smiling, always so reliable. My father had always spoken highly of him, but here it was, his name linked to Philip, to the money laundering, to everything I was about to expose.
"No," I whispered. "Kenneth, but he's like family to us."
Janet nodded slowly, her expression grim. I know. I couldn't believe it either. But all the money trails lead back to him. And it gets worse. He's been pulling strings behind the scenes, using your father's trust in him to cover his tracks. My world tilted. I couldn't breathe. Everything I had thought I understood, everything I had worked so hard for, had been built on lies. My father, my family, they'd been pawns in Kenneth's game this whole time. "Jessica," Janet continued, "you need to understand the gravity of this. If we go public with this, if we expose Kenneth, your father's company, his legacy, it's all going to collapse." I sat back, numb. "I don't care about his legacy," I said, the bitterness in my voice clear. "I care about the people he's destroyed. I care about my life. I won't let them get away with this. Not after everything." Janet placed her hands on the desk, leaning forward. "You need to be careful. If Kenneth is involved, then you're dealing with someone who has a lot of power. We're not just talking about a small scandal here. We're talking about full-scale destruction." I knew what she was saying. I knew the stakes. But there was no turning back now. There was no going back to the life I had before. The life where I didn't know my father was complicit. The life where I thought my marriage was something real. "I'm going to take him down," I said, my voice cold. "I'll make sure they pay for everything they've done to me, to this family." I walked into the familiar coffee shop near Kenneth's office the next day, my pulse racing. This was it, the moment where everything would either fall into place or shatter completely. I spotted him sitting at a corner table, the same warm smile on his face, the same jovial demeanor that had always made him seem like a father figure to me. But now, all I could see was a mask, a facade. I sat down across from him, my hands clenched in my lap, trying to keep my composure. Kenneth didn't seem fazed at all by my sudden appearance. "Jessica, darling, it's good to see you," he said, his voice smooth. Too smooth. "What's on your mind?" I leaned in, my gaze hard. Cut the act. "Kenneth, I know everything." His smile faltered just for a second, then returned, more tightly controlled. "What do you mean? Everything?" "The money, the affair, the lies. You've been working with Philip and my father this whole time, haven't you?" I didn't raise my voice. There was no need for theatrics. I had the truth, and it was stronger than anything he could say. Kenneth's eyes flickered briefly with unease, before he regained his composure. Jessica, I think you've been misled. You don't know the whole story. Oh, I know enough, I replied, my voice sharp. I know you've been stealing from me, from my family, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows who you really are. His face twitched, just for a moment, and I knew I had him. But he wasn't done yet. He leaned back in his chair, folding his hands in front of him. You don't understand. Jessica, you think this is about money. It's not. This is about power. This is about keeping things in the family, keeping your father's legacy intact. By betraying me, by destroying everything I've worked for. I asked, my voice rising. Kenneth's eyes narrowed. You're playing a dangerous game. Jessica, you have no idea what you're dealing with. The words hung in the air between us, thick with tension. For the first time, I understood what he was really capable of.
I know exactly what I'm dealing with, I said, standing up to leave, and I'm not afraid of you anymore.
As I walked out of the coffee shop, I felt a weight lifting off my shoulders. But it wasn't over. Kenneth had shown me just how deep this web of lies went. And now, it was time to unravel it completely. I was about to make my next move, the final step in my plan. But just as I started heading to my car, I saw something that made my heart stop. Tammy. She was standing by my car, talking to someone I hadn't expected to see my father. What were they doing together? I froze. I had to find out what was happening before it was too late. To be continued. The moment I saw my father standing next to Tammy, my blood ran cold. They were talking, but their words were too quiet for me to hear. I stood, frozen, watching them, my heart racing. What was going on? Why was my father, the man who had always been so protective of me, standing there with the very woman who had ruined everything? I took a step forward, but then stopped myself. I couldn't let them see me. Not yet. I needed to understand the full extent of this. I needed to know what they were planning. So I did what I knew best. I stayed in the shadows. For what felt like hours, I watched them. My father's face was unreadable, his back straight, but I could tell something was off. Tammy, on the other hand, was animated, gesturing wildly as she spoke. I could see the flash of anger in her eyes. Whatever they were discussing, it wasn't good. Then my father's voice rose, sharp and clear. We can't back down now. Tammy, it's too late for that. She's already too far gone. I flinched, the words hitting me like a slap. What did he mean by that? Tammy's response was barely audible, but I could make out one word that made my blood run cold. Divorce. That was it. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. They had planned this together. They had been working to destroy me, to take everything I had, to strip me of my inheritance, my father, my sister. They were in on it from the very beginning. They wanted to take me down, make me disappear, all for their own gain. I had been living in a lie. I wasn't just a victim of betrayal. I was a pawn in their game, a game that had been rigged from the start. And now, I had no choice but to fight back. I wasn't just going to take it lying down, no. I was going to make sure they paid for everything. The next day, I stood in front of the courthouse, the weight of everything I had been through pressing heavily on my chest. I was about to walk into a battle I wasn't sure I was ready for, but I had come this far, and there was no turning back now. I took a deep breath, straightened my back, and walked through the doors. My father and Tammy were already inside, sitting at the front of the courtroom like they owned the place. They looked so calm, so assured, like they had already won. But they hadn't won yet, not by a long shot. I took my seat at the back of the room, my eyes never leaving them. They were so focused on the proceedings, so sure of themselves,
But what they didn't know was that I had a weapon they hadn't counted on. I had the truth, and I had the evidence.
The judge entered, and everyone stood up in respect. But as I glanced around the room, I couldn't help but notice something strange. There were several people I didn't recognize sitting in the back, people I had never seen before. I leaned over to Janet, who was sitting next to me, trying to keep my voice steady. "Who are those people?" I whispered. Janet glanced at them quickly. Her face unreadable, she leaned closer to me.
"They're witnesses," she said softly. "They're here to testify against you."
I felt a cold chill run down my spine. What was going on? Were they trying to set me up? Were they planning something I hadn't prepared for? I knew I had to stay focused. I had to keep my eye on the prize. This wasn't just about the divorce anymore. This was about exposing the truth. And nothing, not even my father's secret allies, was going to stop me. The trial began, and everything moved quickly. The lawyers spoke, the witnesses testified, and through it all, I sat there, watching, listening, waiting for the moment to strike. Then, it came. The opposing lawyer called Philip to the stand. He looked like a deer caught in the headlights as he stepped up, his face pale, his hands shaking. He knew the truth was about to come out, and I could see the fear in his eyes. "Mr. Matthews," the lawyer began, "you stand accused of infidelity, financial fraud, and conspiracy to defraud your wife, Ms. Jessica Taylor, out of her inheritance." The words hit me like a slap, but I wasn't angry. I wasn't upset. I was calm. I was in control. This was my moment. This was the moment when they were going to crumble. Philip's voice was weak as he spoke, trying to deny everything. I wasn't. But the lawyer didn't let him off the hook. "Then how do you explain this, Mr. Matthews?" "Can the lawyer shows Philip the video footage from the family reunion?" The footage played on the big screen, and my heart skipped a beat as I saw Philip and Tammy together, laughing, holding hands, my stomach twisted with the memory of the pain I had felt when I first discovered their betrayal. But now, I had the upper hand. The courtroom was silent as the footage continued, the weight of the truth sinking in. Philip's face was a mask of horror as he watched himself exposed. He stuttered, his voice barely a whisper. I can explain." But no one was listening. The evidence was right there. The affair, the stolen money, the lies. They couldn't escape it. And then, it was my father's turn. He stood, his face hard as stone, but I could see the sweat on his brow, the tightness in his jaw. He knew what was coming. He knew I had everything. "Mr. Taylor," the lawyer began, "your daughter claims that you were involved in a conspiracy to defraud her of her inheritance. Do you have anything to say about that?" My father's eyes flickered to mine for just a moment, and I saw the guilt flash across his face. But then he quickly masked it with his usual demeanor. "I have nothing to say," he replied, his voice cold. "This is all a lie." But I could see it in his eyes. I could see the cracks in his armor. And that was when I knew. I had won. But just as I thought the battle was over, I saw someone else in the courtroom, a figure I hadn't expected to show up. It was Kenneth Collins. He was standing in the back, watching, waiting, and suddenly, I realized this wasn't over. The true fight was just beginning. The courtroom was filled with tension. Kenneth Collins, my father's old friend, the man who had been pulling strings behind the scenes, was standing at the back, observing the proceedings with a calmness that infuriated me. I hadn't expected him to show up, but his presence confirmed everything I'd feared. He had been the final piece of the puzzle, the mastermind behind it all, and now I had to deal with him. As the trial continued, I could feel the eyes of everyone in the room on me, The lawyers were wrapping up their arguments. The evidence was stacked against Philip and my father. And yet, Kenneth was still a threat. I wasn't going to leave the courtroom without exposing everything. I motioned to Janet, who was sitting next to me. She knew exactly what I was thinking. "I need to speak to Kenneth," I whispered. She gave me a concerned look, but nodded. "Be careful. He's dangerous." I stood up slowly, my eyes never leaving Kenneth. My heart was pounding, but my resolve was stronger than ever. This wasn't just about the affair anymore. This wasn't just about the money. This was about making sure Kenneth and the others couldn't destroy my life any further. As I approached Kenneth, his expression didn't change. He didn't look surprised or worried, just calm. Too calm. He must have thought he could intimidate me. "You think you're going to get away with this, don't you?" I said, my voice sharp. "You think you've won. But you're wrong. I've got everything on you, all of it. And I will make sure it all comes out. I will expose you and your betrayal." "Kenneth." He smiled, a cold, calculating smile. "Jessica, you're making a huge mistake. You think you have the power, but you don't. You think you're in control, but you're not." His words hit me like a slap, but they only made me more determined. He didn't know who he was dealing with. "You're not invincible, Kenneth," I said firmly. "You'll pay for everything you've done. All of it. And I'll make sure of it." Kenneth stepped closer, his smile never faltering. "If you want to bring this all to light, go ahead. But you'll have to live with the consequences. Your father's empire. Your life will be destroyed. Is that what you want?" I knew then that this wasn't just a personal vendetta. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about justice. It was about holding them accountable for everything they had taken from me, from my family. They didn't get to win. Not now. Not ever. With that, I turned on my heel, walking back to my seat. Janet was watching me, her eyes wide. She could tell I was ready to bring it all down when the trial resumed. I knew it was time. My lawyer, Janet, stood up and confidently presented the final piece of evidence, the recordings of the conversations between Kenneth and my father, the emails they had exchanged, the financial transfers they had coordinated. As the evidence played on the screen, I saw Kenneth's face change. The mask he had been wearing slipped, and I could see the panic creeping into his eyes. It was over. I had won. Philip's face was pale as he sat in the defendant's chair, his eyes darting nervously around the courtroom. Tammy, who had been sitting confidently beside him, was now fidgeting in her seat. The reality of the situation was sinking in for both of them. They were trapped. They couldn't escape. The judge turned to Philip first, his voice cold and authoritative. "Mr. Matthews, you are hereby found guilty of financial fraud, conspiracy, and infidelity. Your actions have caused irreparable harm to your wife, Ms. Jessica Taylor, and you will pay the price for that." I looked at Philip as he slumped in his chair. Defeated, he had no words left. Then, the judge turned to my father. "Mr. Taylor, your involvement in this conspiracy has also been proven. Your actions have not only destroyed your daughter's trust, but have caused irreparable harm to your family. You will also face legal consequences for this." And then, Kenneth, the final piece of the puzzle. The judge turned to him, but I could see the look on his face. Kenneth had always been the puppeteer, the one controlling the strings from behind the scenes. But now, he was exposed, and I knew that nothing could save him now. "Kenneth Collins," the judge said, "you are hereby charged with conspiracy, financial fraud, and abuse of power. Your actions have cost Ms. Jessica Taylor not only her inheritance, but her family. You will face the consequences." Kenneth's face twisted in disbelief. "You think you've won, Jessica. You think you've won," he spat, his voice shaking with rage. "You have no idea what you're dealing with." But I didn't flinch. I didn't react. I had fought for this moment. And now, it was mine. As I stepped out of the courthouse, the cool air hit my face, and I felt the weight lifting off my shoulders. It was over. They were going to face the consequences of their actions. But I didn't feel the satisfaction I thought I would. Instead, I felt something else.
Freedom.
I had taken back control. I had stood up for myself when no one else would. I had fought back against the people who had betrayed me, and I had won. But there was still a part of me that wondered, had I truly won? Or was I simply starting a new chapter in a story that would never end?
For now, though, I didn't have to worry. For the first time in a long time, I could breathe.
The game was over, and I was the one who had called checkmate. The end. If you enjoyed this intense journey of betrayal, revenge, and justice, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more thrilling stories, like this one. What do you think Jessica should do next? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Let's discuss. And remember, sometimes the biggest victories come when you least expect them. Stay tuned for more.